They say the rift never chooses those who kneel. When Kael crashed onto Lytheris, fate forced him to face the truth. To survive, he must break the law, challenge the council, and pay the price with his memory or his love. The purple sky of Lytheris split like shattered glass. Kael gripped the controls as his small ship screamed, metal tearing, alarms spitting red. The navigation signal died the moment the rift opened, a huge tear in space. A spinning web of energy that swallowed everything nearby. He hadn't planned to land on Lytheris, but fate had other plans. The hull shrieked until the craft slammed into black sand and skidded for hundreds of meters before stopping. Kael hammered on the cockpit, blood at the corner of his mouth. He was breathing hard but alive, whether by luck or because the rift had decided to spare him, he didn't know. Lytheris wasn't a normal world. The air tasted of metal and ozone. Far off, white bone-like spires rose up like the ribs of an ancient beast. Two moons braided their light across the sky, casting strange, shifting shadows. Kael stumbled out, still dazed, when drums and shouting hit him. He hadn't had time to hide. A huge plaza opened up, thousands of tall figures, skin shimmering blue-purple, silver hair hanging loose. They knelt around a circular arena. On the sand, two warriors fought. Each strike lit the air like a tear. Blood hit the black sand and steamed up in bright red as the drums beat. Kael realized he'd walked into a ceremony of honor combat, the very ritual older Alliance records mentioned but no one had actually seen. This wasn't just a fight, it was Lytheris law. The winner took the loser's life, power, assets, and even the loser's mate. The cheering cut off when a female warrior stepped up. She was nearly Kael's height, lithe in thin armor that shone like moon-forged metal. Her silver-purple skin reflected torchlight and her yellow eyes burned like coals. She held a long silver spear and lifted her head to the crowd. "Varik, General of the North, you mocked my honor in public. Let your blood prove you," she said, voice deep and cold. Varik, a huge laughing warrior, stomped into the sand, slammed his weapon down. Kael stayed quiet in the crowd, but the warrior's gaze flicked across him for a breath, like she already knew he was there. Like the rift hadn't dropped him randomly, but had placed him at this exact moment. The fight began. Silver spear spun wind, steel sword struck sparks. Kael had never seen brutality so beautiful. Every move was a lethal dance. The crowd roared. When Varik bled and fell, the woman knelt and pressed the spear to his throat. "Honor proven," she declared. The council nodded and the arena chanted her name, Selara. Kael's heart thudded, not only at Selara's strange beauty, but because at the moment of victory her eyes looked straight at him. A stranger thrown into their world, Selara left the dais. The crowd split like waves. She walked straight to Kael and with a small smile touched the spear tip to his chin, making him look up. "You," she said, voice low and raspy like a blade on skin, "you don't belong here, but the rift chose, so by law you must fight or kneel." The crowd exploded. Kael froze. He didn't understand all the rules, but he knew this. He had just been named to the right. Selara was closer now. Her breath smelled of metal and strange flowers. Kael shivered. She wasn't only testing him in public, she was whispering in a different language, the language of hunger and danger. In that instant, Kael realized his life had shifted into a new rhythm. He was no longer just a pilot lost in space. He was a pawn in a game of blood, honor, and desire on a foreign planet. Cliffhanger, Selara stepped back, spear still against Kael's neck. Her yellow eyes blazing under the twin moons. Night on Lytheris never truly darkened. The moons braided silver light over the white bone walls. After the honor combat, Kael was taken to a detention post of black stone beside the plaza. There were no bars, only trembling violet energy columns that looked like red-hot blades to the touch. He leaned back against cold stone and closed his eyes. Selara's victory and the phrase "fight or kneel" kept ringing in him. He didn't know all Lytherian laws. But he knew one thing: since the rift had ripped open and thrown him here, he was trapped on a board from which there was no retreat. A whisper came from the energy column. "You are not like them." Kael opened his eyes. A woman sat against the column, violet light washing across her face. She wore no armor, only a gray-silver cloth, her dark hair with a purple sheen falling to her shoulders. Her eyes were an odd soft blue, very different from Selara's yellow. He stepped closer. "Who are you?" She smiled, a mix of irony and sorrow. "They call me many things on Lytheris, the exiled, the betrayer, the princess without a throne, but you can call me Serenya." The name sounded like a sad note. Princess. Kael looked again. Despite the rough clothes, Serenya carried herself like nobility, straight shoulders, a blade-sharp look, and still a softness that made his heart skip. "You're a princess locked up here?" he asked. She tilted her head and bared a pale scar from neck to collarbone under the cloth. "Because I refused to kneel. I refused to pretend I forgot the rift. The night the blue light first tore the sky, I was there. I saw it. I heard it." Kael jumped. "You heard it?" "The call," Serenya whispered, eyes fixed on him. "What Selara's people call a legend, but it is real. The rift is not just a doorway, it chooses, and now it has chosen you." A chill ran down Kael's spine. He remembered before the crash, the sky splitting and a green-blue light swallowing the night. He thought the sound that reached him, a faint, singing voice in his comms, was a hallucination as he fell. Now an exiled princess named Serenya spoke the same thing. "What do you know about the rift?" Kael asked, voice rough. Serenya walked close and touched the energy column. The violet crackled at her hand, making the air smell of ozone. "More than the High Council wants anyone to admit. My father, the Council, they fear the truth. The rift isn't only a gate, it's judgment, it's promise, it's rebirth." Kael laid his palm on the column too, heat pushed back. For a second it felt like current passing through both their hands, connecting them. "Do you feel it?" she asked, soft, like an invitation. Kael nodded slowly, something pulling. Serenya's sad smile deepened. "That's the light, a piece of it lives in you, in me. I was stripped of power and cast out, and you're a newcomer. They'll test you, tear you down to find what the rift wants. Selara, my sister, will be the first to try the fire." Her tone when she said Selara's name wasn't hate, it was a honed knife. Kael felt the complicated bond between the sisters, one enthroned, one erased, one hailed, one punished. "If the rift really chose me, what do I do?" he asked. Serenya leaned closer so that the blue in her eyes filled his vision. "Survive, keep the rhythm, and when the moment comes, don't pick honor or power, pick the truth." He breathed in. She spoke as if she already knew his path, like she could read his fear and desire. For a moment everything quieted, only the soft electrical hum and the beat of his heart. Serenya's formed by the column blurred, becoming more and more an irresistible, forbidden presence. "Tomorrow," she said, "they'll parade you in the plaza. The council will declare you must enter the rite. Selara will demand your blood or your submission. But remember, Kael, the rift never chooses the one who kneels." She turned and melted into the violet mist. Kael stood with his hand still on the column, feeling the warmth of her touch through the energy field. He understood then his fate had taken another turn. He would face Selara, a warrior hailed by the whole bay, and be entangled with Serenya, the exiled princess tied to the rift's legend. Which was more dangerous, the blood in the arena, or the blue eyes that had staked his heart? The cliffhanger in the distance, a ceremonial drum began to beat, signaling dawn. From beyond the energy column, Serenya's whisper came back like an echo. "You've stepped onto the point of no return, Kael. I will be your shadow, or the blade that ends you." Dawn on Lytheris rose to rolling bronze drums, not birds, not wind, drums echoing from the bay to the bone-white walls like the planet's giant heart. Kael jolted awake in his cell. The violet energy pillars still hummed, but outside the plaza was already packed. Lythurians gathered like waves, black fur cloaks, sea dragon masks, golden eyes burning with open hunger as they stared down at the arena. Today wasn't just a fight, it was an ancient rite, blood trial. They dragged Kael into the center, cold shackles tight around his wrists. The lead guard was a giant with a shaved head and metallic violet skin, a sword scar carved across his chest. He shoved Kael to the sand and thundered, "You stranger from the rift will taste the blood law of Lytheris." On the high dais, the High Council sat stone still. Selara in silver armor stood like a statue, eyes locked on Kael, but the challenger wasn't her. A different warrior stepped forward, massive, cords of muscle like braided wire. Varik, commander of the royal guard. Varik threw off his cloak, scars across his torso like medals. He lifted his war spear and roared. "I, Varik, challenge this off-worlder. Before the council in the rift's light, I claim blood law. The loser loses everything, not only life, but the mate." The crowd went feral, brass horns screamed. Women in the front row raised red ribbons, the mark for a spouse to be seized if their mate fell. Kael's hands clenched. He had no mate here. But Varik's eyes cut toward Selara, then slid to the back row where Serenya sat bound to a stone chair. Kael understood at once. If he lost, Serenya would be dragged out and handed to Varik as a prize. "This law is sick," Kael muttered, just loud enough for the guard. The guard only sneered. "It is our honor. The winner takes all, the loser deserves nothing." The drums climbed, the shackles snapped open. They shoved Kael into the circle. "Fire. You're a straw in a storm," he growled. "Kneel and die quick before I grind your bones." Kael drew breath. Serenya's whisper from the night before pulsed in his head. The rift never chooses the one who kneels. He gripped the ceremonial blade, short, unbalanced, but sharp enough to open flesh. A horn bellowed. The honor duel began. Varik charged with beast force. Kael rolled. Sand exploded. The spear bit the ground and shivered the whole circle. The stands howled like surf. Kael popped up and slashed, but Varik blocked clean with the spear butt. The impact numbed Kael's arm. Varik laughed. "Weak, humans only talk." Kael set his jaw. He couldn't outmuscle this monster, so he wouldn't. In his mind a familiar beat rose. 5-3-2, the rift pattern Serenya spoke of. He began to move to it. 3 left, 2 back, 1 pivot. Varik, built for straight-line murder, kept stabbing empty air, missing by inches, growing angrier. A ripple of murmurs swept the stands. Selara narrowed her eyes. Kael wasn't flailing, he was keeping time. Another spear thrust sliced the air. Kael crashed inside the arc, drove his pommel into Varik's sternum. The giant buckled for half a second, enough for Kael to turn his wrist and lay the blade across Varik's throat. Silence dropped over the plaza. Kael panted, sweat stinging his eyes, blade steady. "You've lost." Varik snarled and tried to rise. The blade kissed skin and drew a fine red line. Blood spilled to the sand. The plaza detonated, horns, drums, screams. Cutting through the chaos, the priest's voice rang cold. "Blood law names not only the living, it names the owner. By right, the mate of Varik now belongs to Kael." Breath sucked from 1,000 throats. Eyes swung to the stone benches where a young warrior woman, Varik's wife, went pale. Selara's gaze turned to ice on Kael. Serenya closed her eyes, face caught between grief and bitter humor. Kael stood frozen, his heart hammered. He had won, and the prize was a new chain. If he accepted, he became a beast in their blood game. If he refused, he insulted blood law, and an entire world would mark him a blasphemer. The sand at his boots was still wet with Varik's blood. The drums rolled again like the rift's heart, urging him to choose. Kael looked up at Selara, judge and blade, at Serenya, keeper of truth, then at the woman about to be handed to him. The crowd screamed for his answer. Would he take possession or break the blood law in front of thousands? The last drumbeat died. West Lytheris held a razor quiet. Blood spread in the sand at Kael's feet. His short blade still hovered at the defeated man's throat. For a strange second, even the arena wind stopped. Then the crowd erupted. Roars and rages tangled. No off-worlder had ever dared the blood trial, and no one had imagined he could win. "Impossible," an old warrior shouted, throwing his helm to the sand. "Varik has never fallen," another barked. He fell to that cursed rhythm. Kael staggered, lungs burning. He knew he hadn't won by strength. The thing that held him together was the 5-3-2 the rift's beat Serenya had planted in his ear. Every step, feint, and counter slipped into that pattern, turning untraditional into a weapon. Varik knelt, blood seeping from his neck, eyes blazing with hate. "You cheated, witchcraft." The council cut him off. Selara stepped down from the highest seat. Silver armor flashing, she looked at Kael no longer with scorn, but with a sharp mixture of surprise and caution. "Blood law speaks plainly," she said, voice carrying. "The winner by any means holds the right. Varik is down. The off-worlder Kael is the victor." Sound rolled across the city. Some screamed in fury, but the ritual horns drowned them. Above, a red banner climbed the mast, sealing the judgment. In chains at the rear. Serenya tilted her head and smiled, a small, private pride. "You did it," she thought, and knew the cost. From now on, Kael was a spark inside a storm. His victory wasn't a triumphant hymn. It was a blade-splitting Lytherian society. One side, the young, the restless, shouted his name and punched the air. "This is a sign from the rift. The old law is cracking." The other, elders and hardliners, growled, "Demon. That mad rhythm will drag our world to ruin." The arena shook as if Lytheris itself was shifting. As custom demanded, Varik's spouse, the sharp-eyed young warrior, was led before Kael. The crowd went silent, waiting for him to claim the war prize. Kael's grip tightened around the blade. He knew a nod would bind her to him by law. From the far row, Serenya watched, worry and hope in her eyes. Solara watched too, expression like frost, to see if the off-worlder would bow to custom or defy a planet. Kael drew a breath, then dropped the blade into the sand. His voice rang across the arena. I won by rhythm, not to chain another soul. If this is your honor, keep it. I don't want it. Chaos split the stands, half cursed him, half cheered. The council reeled. Varik laughed, wet and ugly, blood still threading his throat. You just spat on the law, they will not forgive you. That night they returned Kael to a cell, not in heavy irons, just 2 guards at the door, as if the council was both afraid and unsure what to do next. News ripped across Lytheris in hours. The off-worlder defeated Varik and refused the prize. In the dark, Kael sat and breathed. Before him wasn't just a win, it was a rising tide, and he was its center. Later, Serenya slipped close to the cell. Through the energy bars, her whisper brushed the air. You shook the whole planet, and you lit a fire that can burn it down. Be ready, Kael. From here on, every choice you make becomes myth or tragedy. Dawn on Lytheris painted the arena in a cold ash gray. The blood-soaked sand from last night had been swept away, but the metallic stench and the heavy incense clung like a reminder. This place never forgets. Kael was dragged before the ancient council, 12 elders seated in a half-circle of stone thrones. They looked at him not with respect, but with the wary eyes of men trying to leash a wild beast they barely controlled. Solara, the warrior princess in gleaming silver armor, stepped forward. Her voice cut the air like a blade. Blood law has spoken. The victor inherits not only honor but bonds, and in this case, her gaze flicked toward Serenya, lightly bound, head bowed, the prize. The plaza erupted. The old guard shouted in triumph of the law. The younger warriors roared Kael's name, urging him to defy the chains of tradition. But the council sat like carved stone, unmoved. Kael's fists clenched. His voice rang out. I already refused. I will not turn a person into a trophy. Elder Draven, beard trailing to his chest, slammed his staff against the stone. Refusal is insult to our ancestors. Law is not choice, it is the chain of glory, and that chain Kael now binds to you. Kael's jaw locked. He wasn't afraid, but he saw the trap. Bow his head and betray himself, or resist and turn his victory meaningless and put Serenya in mortal danger. Serenya lifted her face, silver eyes lit in the sun. She spoke without a tremor. I am not a prize. If Kael refuses, I accept exile, but do not force him to carry your empty chains. The plaza went still, a fallen princess daring to speak before the council. Draven sneered. You have no right. You are bound by blood and defeat. You belong to him or to fire. The word froze the air. Fire meant sacrifice. Kael stepped forward, eyes burning. No. Touch her and you will face the rift's rhythm, and the rift will not forgive. The crowd shuddered. Since his strange victory, since that 5-3-2 beat, the rift had become more than legend. It was fear, and it was hope. Solara's golden eyes flickered with something Kael couldn't name: curiosity, envy, admiration. At last the council chose a middle path, the binding ceremony. An ancient rite where the victor tied a red ribbon around the prize, wrist to mark ownership. Not immediate consummation, but enough to declare before all. Serenya now belonged to Kael. Inside the ancestor hall, carved with bone runes, thousands watched. A servant carried forward the deep red ribbon, the same token once tied to Varik's conquests. Kael's hand trembled as he took it. He turned to Serenya. She met his eyes, no hatred, no fear, pride, and beneath it a fragile softness. He whispered so only she could hear. I won't chain you, but if I don't tie this, they'll kill you. Trust me. Serenya gave the faintest nod. The ribbon slid around her wrist. Horns blared. The crowd screamed to them. The rite was sealed. To Kael and Serenya, it was not chains, it was a silent vow. This binding would one day be broken. After the rite, they were led to the trophy chamber, a lavish room, triple locked by Gua. The air inside was heavy. Firelight licked the walls. Serenya sat by the window, eyes fixed on the distant glow of the rift. Kael sat across, his hand brushing the ribbon still tied to her wrist. They expect us to chain each other tonight, she murmured. I won't. Kael answered, voice low and firm. This ribbon isn't possession, it's the start of rebellion, a beat of silence. Then Serenya gave a faint, bittersweet laugh. You're insane, Kael, maybe that's what I need. Kael, exhausted, drifted to sleep. Serenya stayed awake. Through cracks in the wall, she caught whispers from the guards. The council won't let him live long. Beating Varik was just the start. They're planning another match, not for honor, but for death. With who? Selara shall be the final chain. If he beats her, Lytheris burns. Serenya shivered. She turned back to Kael, his face lit by rift light in sleep. Fear coiled in her chest, but so did resolve. If the council wanted to make him their pawn, she would break the board. On the third night after the binding ceremony, the skies of Lytheris no longer glowed with calm emerald. At the stroke of midnight, while the palace guards dozed in boredom, Kael jolted awake, not from sound, but from a sudden flash of red searing through the window. He sprang to his feet. Out over the sky lake, the rift burned crimson, glowing like a wound gone septic. Its light rippled into waves, blinking in the familiar rhythm of 5-3-2, then suddenly breaking down into chaos. Serenya, Kael whispered. She had been meditating in the corner, but the sound of his voice made her shudder as if yanked from a nightmare. Her silver eyes flew open, pupils dilating against the red light. No, no, it can't be, her voice cracked. Her hand clutched at the scarlet ribbon tied to her wrist. Kael rushed over, gripping her shoulders. Tell me, you know what this means. Don't you? Her breath came in sharp bursts. Memories surged back like a flood. A child standing at a blood rite, the rift above, painted red warriors collapsing to their knees, and a song in an ancient tongue she no longer fully remembered. I saw it before, she stammered. When I was a child, before they stripped my birthright, the red rift is the omen of the day of broken chains, the day an outsider shatters the old laws. Kael froze. Outsider, you mean? You. Serenya said, lifting her head. Her silver eyes trembled, but her voice was steady. When you defeated Varik, I suspected, but tonight, the rift confirms it. You're not just a castaway, you are the sign. Her words spilled out with trembling clarity. She remembered standing in the grand hall, her father's hand around hers, a crimson crack tearing the rift wide, trumpets blaring like thunder, then silence, only the beat of 5-3-2 pounding in her chest. Then the verdict, the child marked by light will be exiled, lest disaster come. Serenya brushed her hair aside, revealing a thin scar behind her ear, the hidden mark her family had once concealed. That scar had branded her as a curse, stripping her birthright, casting her out as the exiled princess. Kael's chest tightened. He saw not just the warrior before him, but the betrayed child within her, punished for the same truth that now bound them both. By morning, word of the Red Rift had spread across the capital. The High Council convened. Elder Draven slammed his staff against the stone. The Red Rift has returned, the prophecy moves. And this outsider is its axis. He must be bound tighter or destroyed. Selara, the warrior princess, rose sharply. If he is the prophecy, killing him is like striking a spark in dry tinder. I say we use him, test him, bend him to our cause. Draven's eyes narrowed, but some elders nodded. A double-edged plan was set: exploit Kael, but prepare a death trap. That night in their guarded chamber, Kael and Serenya sat together, outside. Shadows of guards drifted by like ghosts. The rift's crimson glow painted their faces as if dipped in blood. Serenya, Kael murmured, if they discover your mark, your truth, you'll be in more danger than me. She gave a bitter half-smile. You think I fear that? I've lived chained my whole life. If the rift wants me at your side, I won't run. Kael's fingers brushed her wrist over the tight red ribbon. This ribbon, it might be a curse, but maybe it's also the key. Her gaze lingered on him, long and unflinching. In the red glow, his face was fierce, yet weary. She reached up, almost without thinking, tracing the scar still raw on his cheek, the one Varik had left behind. You carry strength, Kael, but it's your stubbornness that makes me believe. If the day of broken chains is real, maybe I don't want to run anymore. For a moment, silence pressed in. The crimson rift pulsed. But in the space between them, there was only a single rhythm shared. That night, Kael drifted into uneasy sleep. Serenya stayed awake, listening to the rift echo inside her chest like a distant drum, then a scrape at the door. A folded scrap of paper slid under the crack, scrawled in hurried, shaking script. The red rift is not just an omen. They will test his blood tomorrow. Beware. Serenya's eyes widened, the silver in them blazing in the dark. She looked at Kael's sleeping form, his hand still curled around the ribbon binding them. Outside, the rift pulsed 5-3-2, then collapsed into fractured beats, like the universe itself trying to warn them. The price of truth was about to be collected. Lytheris had not yet settled after the blood duel. News of Kael's victory over Varik spread across the provinces, from crystal-lit palaces to the dust-choked bazaars. Some hailed him as the outsider who broke the law. Others cursed his name as a stain upon tradition, and in the chaos, hands began to stir in the dark. That night in the obsidian library of Lytheris, Kael and Serenya were summoned to meet Mira Thal, known as the Keeper of Rift Chronicles. Hundreds of candles threw jagged shadows across her hollowed face. Her eyes were dark wells, her long silver hair falling like ash. She unfurled a star map sealed for centuries, its lines traced in deep crimson, marking the rift's orbit. "You think the rift is just a doorway," Mira whispered, her voice soft yet chilling as she looked straight at Serenya. "No, the rift is a trial. It does not grant passage to the timid, it chooses, and it tests who dares to listen." Serenya froze, fragments of memory flooding back, red glare, voiceless thunder, her small hand clutching tight during an old blood rite. Kael's fingers tightened around his blade. "Trial, what do you mean?" Mira turned a ritual dagger, letting candlelight catch the ancient runes carved into its steel. "When the signal calls, those who hear and refuse to answer are crushed. Those who answer must pay with what they love most." Her words still echoed when a shadow moved between the pillars. Varik, defeated yet not dead, his battered armor caught the red glow as he stepped forward. Beside him was Zorath, warlord of the eastern mines. Zorath's gaze was as sharp as a blade, his smile coiled with malice. "How amusing," Varik rasped. "The outsider is celebrated as a hero, while I, Lytheris blood and bone, am cast aside as a failure." Zorath stepped closer. "The council is rotten. Honor laws are ch." Kael lifted his chin. His voice was cold. "You want to use the rift to seize power. You don't understand. It isn't a tool." Zorath's laugh was low and bitter. "Only the weak say that. The strong turn everything into a weapon, even light." Serenya's eyes burned as she spoke, her voice cutting sharp. "You're wrong. The rift never belongs to the greedy." The air thickened. Candle flames bent and wavered, spilling blood-red shadows across the stone floor. Mira gripped the star map, lowering her voice to Kael and Serenya. "Listen, if the council falls, if Varik and Zorath force the rift open their way, Lytheris will not remain a planet. It will become a torch that burns the universe." The library doors slammed shut. Betrayal had spoken aloud, and for the first time the darkness had a name. Cliffhanger. Varik laid a scarred hand on Zorath's shoulder, eyes locked on Kael. "The day you strike the rift's rhythm, outsider, will be the day you lose everything." The path plunged deep underground, damp and narrow like the throat of some beast. Red-lit carvings pulsed along the stone walls, glowing with every step as though the planet's veins flowed beneath its skin. Kael led the way holding a plasma torch, its cold blue flame spilled against vaulted ceilings. Serenya followed, fingertips tracing ancient Lytherian runes, her hands trembling as if touching sealed memories. With a grinding roar, a massive stone door swung open. Inside lay the rift synchronization chamber. At its center stood a machine of impossible design, a circular frame of alien alloy coiled with red burning wires. Suspended in the middle was the eye of the rift, a crystal sphere throbbing with dark red light, pulsing like a giant beating heart. Though Mira Thal had not come, her warning rang in their minds. There are only two paths. One, offer the Chosen's memory to the rift, and the gate will close forever. Two, step through, leave Lytheris for the world beyond. No one knows what awaits. Kael stared into the swirling glow. "If I give my memories," he said quietly, "you'll forget everything. We'll lose it all, you and I." Serenya moved closer, her eyes reflecting crimson fire. "But if we step through," she whispered, "we may never come back. It could be life, or it could be death." The air grew heavy, every breath swallowed by silence. The synchronizer began to hum. Deep vibration rattling the chamber stones. Dust glittered as it fell, like stars shaken from the ceiling. Serenya turned to him suddenly. "Have you ever thought maybe the rift just wants to see how far we'll go for love?" Kael said nothing. He stepped forward, clasped her hand tight. For a heartbeat amid the crimson blaze, he felt her tremble, but she did not pull away. Their eyes locked. No counsel, no chains, only the truth. They were two souls bound by fate, forced to make the greatest choice of their lives. The machine's pulse quickened. The red light spread across the ceiling, forming a giant circle, a window. Through it shimmered not water, but a mirrored world, fields of white, towers inverted, a sky of blazing violet fire. Another universe. Kael's voice was a whisper. "This is the red window." Serenya leaned closer, almost drawn in, but Kael pulled her back. "Not yet. We need to choose, surrender memory or risk everything." Metallic echoes rang down the corridor, the march of soldiers. Zorath's rebels had tracked them, drawing nearer. Time was running out. Serenya pressed her hand to Kael's chest, her palm burning against him. She leaned close, her whisper fierce and tender. If the chamber shook, red light flooded every stone. The gate opened wide, heart of the rift. Cliffhanger, the portal yawned, the whole chamber trembling as if about to explode. Varik's voice boomed from the shadows. We'll all walk through together, but whoever steps last will not exist. The rift chamber shook violently. The red coils of the synchronizer screamed like souls being torn apart. Crimson light poured across the stone walls, spilling down on them like hot blood dripping from the sky. The red window widened, revealing another world, towers twisted like spinal bones, blinding white plains, and a sky of purple-black streaked with bolts of white lightning. Kael and Serenya gripped each other's hands. Behind them came the thunder of boots and furious shouts. Varik and Zorath's rebels stormed in, their black-armored troops waving banners of revolt under the crimson glare. From the opposite hall, the Lytherian council advanced with their silver-helmed guard, chanting ancient rites to suppress heresy. The chamber had become the final arena. Plasma fire seared, energy blades shrieked, and above them the rift gate opened wider, the eye of a god staring down upon both sides. Kael Serenya cried, her eyes blazing. If the gate closes without memory being sent, everything will be consumed. Kael turned, heart blazing. If you step through, I lose you forever. Her lips split as she bit down, blood bright against pale skin. If I stay, we'll be chained forever. The council will never release us. Varik will never stop. Varik's roar thundered. Serenya belongs to the law if she dares to cross. Her name will be buried in the blood of all Lytheris. Kael roared back, lunging at him. His plasma blade cut arcs of blue fire. They collided like thunder. Varik, huge armor gleaming red, swung with brutal force. But Kael was faster, fighting with the fury of a man terrified of losing love. Every strike, every blow beat in time with the rift's rhythm, powerful, desperate, unstoppable. Meanwhile, Serenya battled the council guard. She moved like flame, her hair catching the red glare as it whipped about her face. Each swing carried the weight of years stolen from her, years of chains and exile. As she cut one soldier down, her gaze flicked toward the widening gate. Its call was irresistible. The machine screamed louder. The vortex of crimson spun into a blood-lit bridge leading into the other world. Just a few beats more and it would either stabilize or collapse. Kael flung Varik aside, his arm bleeding, gasping. He seized Serenya's hand, shouting above the chaos, "Choose, stay, fight with me against them all, or step through and lose me forever." Serenya trembled, a tear mixing with blood on her cheek. "Kael, if I stay, you'll die. If I go, I die inside." The rift's light engulfed them. They clung to each other, mouths crashing in a desperate kiss, the kiss of farewell and vow. Breathless, hands clawing tight as if to carve each other into memory before fate tore them apart. The machine shrieked, the chamber cracked, rock rained from above. From the shadows, Nico Carver, neutral observer turned witness, shouted, "Now, only one path can be taken if you hesitate." The rift swallows the planet. Kael looked into Serenya's eyes. His voice broke. "Go, I'll hold it, I swear." Serenya sobbed, screaming, "No, I won't leave you." He gripped her hand one last time, then shoved her toward the bridge. "You must live, you must hear the call. I will keep the memory." He turned, slamming the power lever. Memories flooded into the rift. The night they met, her eyes, her laughter, the heat of skin against skin, all of it burned into the red light. Serenya was pulled into the gate. Her body shimmered into radiance, dissolving in the rift's glow. Her last cry echoed, "Kael, don't forget me." The portal sealed with a blinding detonation. The chamber collapsed. Darkness swallowed everything. Cliffhanger, days later at the shoreline, the rift's crimson glow still flickered. In its depths, Serenya's face appeared for a fleeting second, her lips moving with words Kael could not hear. The rift chamber was gone, reduced to a crater of ash and rubble. Smoke curled upward like a funeral shroud. The rebels were obliterated, the council scattered, and Varik vanished in the wreckage. No one knew if he lived or if the rift had claimed him. Lytheris' shore lay eerily still. 3 days passed, then 5, then a week. Whispers spread of an energy accident. No one dared speak of the rift. No one dared name Kael or Serenya. Yet the survivors knew they had witnessed something that could never be erased. Kael awoke amid shattered stone. He didn't know how he had survived. His body was battered, broken, but alive. In his bloodied hand, he still clutched the blackened hilt of his plasma blade, and in his mind rang Serenya's final memory, the fire of her kiss, her trembling hand, the voice that had carried across the rift. He crawled from the pit and looked upon the frozen lake, its surface smooth as glass. On it blinked a new rhythm, not 5-3-2, but 3-5-2, 3 short beats, 5 long, 2 short, a signal no one had ever seen. Kael dropped to his knees, hand trembling as he tapped the pattern into the ground. The lake answered, pulsing back in perfect echo. She's still there. On the other side, Serenya stood in an alien world, sky red, ground white, towers rising like vertebrae into the clouds, lost. But guided by the rift's thread of light, she heard Kael not in words but in rhythm, the rhythm only they knew. He's alive, she whispered, pressing her hand to her chest, and he still keeps the beat. A figure approached, not Kael, but something taller, with crystalline eyes and metallic skin. It nodded, pointing toward the horizon, where more lights blinked, other signals, other voices. Serenya's breath caught. Kael had not just opened the rift for her, he had awakened a network spanning the stars. Back on Lytheris, the council gathered in shadows. Elder Draven dropped a thick file onto the table. His voice was dry, brittle. We no longer control the rift. Something else has begun. Decide, suppress it, or learn to live with it. No one spoke. Beyond the walls from the lake, the 3-5-2 rhythm pulsed steady. Kael stood alone at the shore, body scarred. Eyes burning with purpose, he whispered into the night, Serenya, if you can hear me, know this, I will find you, even if I must tap this rhythm for the rest of my life. The crimson light shimmered across the water. For a heartbeat, her reflection flickered back, 2 worlds apart, yet bound by the same beat. The rift had closed, one remained, one crossed over, but the 3-5-2 pulse endured, unyielding, eternal. A promise that stretched beyond distance, beyond worlds, and that light would never die.